Onyi, let's start off by talking about distinction. I love where you're going with distinction right now. Give us the 30 to 60 second definition of when you think of leadership, when you think about entrepreneurship, creativity, companies. Give me the pitch on distinction. What is your thinking around that?
Yeah, so in 2000, when I came up with a brand, it was first distinction, but now it's cutting edge distinction. I said that distinction in leadership is not about beating the best. Distinction in leadership is about beating your best.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Distinction in leadership isn't about beating the best. Distinction in leadership is about beating your best.
So you're competing against yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, you're continually raising the bar. Of course, you see other people in your industry, whatever, as a reference point, but you're always beating yourself. You're always enjoying beating yourself as well.
That sounds like a very empowering place to operate from. I mean, it's good to have reference points. It's good to see what other people are doing, but fundamentally, you're just kind of staying focused on yourself, your own skills, where you can do better, how you can improve, how you can be a bigger blessing to others. Am I hearing you right? Is that correct?
100%. And I love what you mentioned about being a blessing to others. So it's important to be blessed, but also it's about important to be a blessing. So one of the aspects of cutting edge distinction is becoming legacy minded. You know, when I speak to my audiences around the world or speak to clients, I always tell them, dear leader, do you know you don't have to be dead to leave a legacy? So when famous people die, we say, oh, he left a legacy or she left a legacy. But actually, you don't have to be dead to leave a legacy. That's the essence of being a cutting edge leader, the essence of cutting edge distinction.
Yeah, you leave a legacy every single day. Is that correct? Or at least in goal. Yeah, I get that. I love that. Let's talk a bit of where you started. You came out of university. Did you see yourself having this career? Global audiences?
Not in a million years.
Okay.
So I started. So let's go to the beginning. In the beginning, so I was born and raised in Hackney, East London. I know this is an international audience, so London being the capital of England, sorry, is divided into four areas: so North London, South London, East London, and West London. So I was born and raised in Hackney, East London, to a 2.4 family: my dad, my mom, my sister, and myself. Unfortunately, at a very early age, my dad left. So for the majority of my childhood years and my teenage years, it was just me, my mum, and my sister. Thankfully, on Father's Day, it must have been about 11 years ago, after 25 years, Ruben, me and my dad connected after 25 years.
Wow.
I know the audience and yourself remembers that song by Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River.
Yeah.
But in this song, in this case, it was Cry Me an Ocean, because I cried, I cried, I cried. I mean, not seeing my dad for 25 years,
Yeah.
you know, had no choice but to be emotional. So coming from a Nigerian background, my mum being the best mum in the world, I had to go through the education lineage, so to say. So, you know, I had to be a doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, which was a typical Nigerian or West African wish for their children. So I went to a really good secondary school in North London, went to Middlesex, I went to Southgate College again, which is North London. I didn't know what I wanted to become, but, you know, I was going with the flow. Got to university level to study management and marketing. And again, I didn't know what I want to become, but that's the first time I had freedom, the first time I had money, you know, for my student loan and student grant. And being raised in Hackney, East London, the majority, if not all my friends were black, as in black skin, or if you want to describe it like that. But when I got to university, all of a sudden I had white friends, Indian friends, Chinese friends. It was a kaleidoscope of friends from around the world. And it really, you know, I really loved it, particularly the first year. Unfortunately, when I got to the second year of university, I dropped out, or I became distracted. I dropped out and began living a particular life called a street life. I suppose in America, they might call it thug life, which is a whole nother story in itself. But it wasn't really gangs, but it was this young men on the streets of East London up to no good. Unfortunately, in that 10-year period, 6 of my friends got murdered. I nearly got shot dead, and I went to prison twice. So you can imagine, as a young man, I had no purpose, no dream, no direction, nothing. You know, thankfully, it wasn't when I went to prison twice, it wasn't nothing serious. It was just gang fighting and whatever. You know, so as a latter stage of living that street life, you know, I love music anyway. One of my favorite songs of all time is Labby Safi. There's something inside so strong. I'm not sure if you heard that song before, but I'm sure many of the listeners might have. Really beautiful song. And I just knew there was something inside of me so strong. I didn't know what it was. You know, I knew I was better than prison and better than the shootouts and going to the funerals. I just knew. In the latter stage of living that lifestyle, the only job I saw myself doing was becoming a counsellor, working in North London as a counsellor, not a politician, but a counsellor helping people. So on the 2nd of November 2008, I became a born-again Christian, and my journey started from there. I went back to college, adult college, got my 2 qualifications in counseling, went to do a life coaching course. Of course, at the end of the program, they sell you the package.
Right.
At the time, I didn't have, I think the cheapest package was £4,000. At the time, I didn't have £40 to my name, you know. So I took a step of faith, launched my first business, began doing monthly workshops. Your time is now. Them times there I was quite heavy on Facebook, you know, so I had like 150 people registered at £10. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making money. Yes, I've made it. Nobody came for like 3 to 6 months, but I was a dog with a bone. And then, you know, 2008, so I started off in the education sector, began doing workshops and talks in schools, colleges, university. 2018, I knew by revelation that a shift was coming. Of course, I didn't know it'd be the pandemic, but I knew something was coming. So I pivoted my business model to now add more value to the corporate world on a global level, and then became more of a global leadership speaker, which now in 2023, as a global leadership speaker, a corporate trainer and futurist, I coach and I train leaders, and I speak on all things leadership development and learning development. I've called the 2020s the era of creative distinction, and my legacy is titled From Detention to Distinction.
I love that. First of all, I love your story. I love, overcomer. It's such an overcoming story. It's so inspirational. Let's dissect it a little bit. Do you think that you fell off the wagon, so to speak, your second year of college? Because do you think it was some sort of like late teenage rebellion? You had to be this man-child early. You had to grow up much, maybe quicker than you thought. You had to get into the great schools. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there was something that caught up to you that led you to. Am I wrong here? I don't know. Am I on the right track?
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. Hindsight is one of the best levels of sight. To be honest, my friend, quote unquote, he wasn't really at university. He was the only one out of my friends, my circle of friends, to be at university, and even he wasn't serious. But one day he came in with an envelope of money. He said, "Look, I'm making some real money now," and my eyes just went pop. And then from then, I mean, they said that the love of money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil.
That's right.
So it was just, even though I had a student loan and student grant, so I had money for the first time ever. But of course, my mind just went pop, and then the rest is history.
I love your transformation story. Let's talk a little bit as you were coming out of the thug life or the street life, and you said, you know what, you had an awakening, you had a powerful moment of faith, you had a clarity, you had a sense of purpose. Do you always have to know the specifics around where you're going, or is it sometimes just good enough to know, like, I'm on the right path and things will work themselves out? You just have this inner peace that you're following the stream. What's the tension between those two?
100%. I think, as a futurist, as a coach, as a trainer, I think it's important to have a direction where you're going, but sometimes it's just walking. Sometimes you're walking by faith, you're walking blindly, quote unquote, but you're going somewhere. That's right. Eventually, as you take them baby steps, them steps become giant steps and giant forks. And before you know it, you've got a clear-cut direction you're going to. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to, of course, have a direction. But when you're starting off, of course, we're going to fail, we're going to fall, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to go down the wrong route. But, yeah, at the early stage, you don't have to have a tightly knitted plan, no.
Right. So you figure things out as you go along, is what I'm hearing you say. Because a lot of folks in transition right now might be saying, I've been in the corporate world for 20 years. I've always been feeling like I was supposed to do something different. That's kind of that gives them some hope, right? That, hey, you can jump out of the airplane knowing that the parachute will open as long as you keep going. Is that correct? Am I onto something?
100%. But I say, and I've always said it, even learned from my own experience, if you're going to jump out the parachute, for example, in the corporate world, make sure your expenses are covered for at least 6 to 12 months.
Yeah,
where you know, because I've done that before, and mate, it wasn't easy. So I've always say, wisdom is the principal thing. Of course, if you want to, if you're working in the corporate for 25 years, you feel, I'm fed up enough, feel free to leave or pivot or go in a whole different industry. But if you're going to leave that environment, just suddenly make sure you've got, and the way things are going, at least 6 to 12 months, everything is covered financially. Then you know that, okay, you can breathe.
100%. Let's talk though, when you said you had 40 pounds in your pocket and you need to come up with 4,000. So you started your own coaching business and you started these seminars and whatnot. And you said, I think you said not that many people showed up initially, but you just kept on going, right? That's an interesting place to be, because let's talk about the tension between a calling and compulsion. Like you felt you got a calling, but there was also a compulsion that drove you. Like what I'm hearing you say is you couldn't quit. There was just something inside you. You knew that whatever, however hard it gets, however scary it gets, I gotta keep going. Is that correct? Is that where you took this story? Is that how your story unfolded in those early days?
100%, Ruben. I was, you know, and I've gone through a lot, believe me. And I got to a point when I didn't know how to give up. That, you know, you get motivational speakers that say never give up on your dreams. That's fair enough, but I didn't know how to give up. I just, you know, I was a dog with a bone. I had a focus. I had a vision. I had a legacy, and I couldn't actually do anything else. I've got no qualifications per se, apart from level 1 and level 2 counselling, which couldn't have got me anywhere. You know, I'm not a lawyer or a mechanic or a hairdresser, or do you understand? So all I had was this thing. So I just had to go all out with it and just go like a bulldozer. Just
No, and I know in an Instagram world, we always have like, hey, we had the vision in front of us and we knew what we were doing. But what are some days when you didn't even have that? You were so knee deep in the pain and the how am I going to move this forward? It was that compulsion that drove you. I love what you said. You didn't know how to quit, and the people around you look at you and say, "You're nuts! Like walk away." And you had to trust your instincts. Tell me about that, because I think that's such a raw experience.
You have to get to, I realize as an entrepreneur, you have to get to a point of such a, I loved your word you used, compulsion, a conviction, and a clarity that, you know, even if you have to ignore your family members, even if they're giving you advice, which is good or bad, you know in your heart that what they're saying is not even relevant. But you just have to, for example, my dad, you know, the best dad in the world, you know, he said, oh, you know, when I was going through my wilderness period or wilderness decade, I was going to say, my dad was like, oh, you know, son, you know, go back to college, get a qualification. I was like, yeah, yes, dad, definitely, dad, yes. Because I have to say yes anyway, because of my dad. But after I dropped the call, I was like, yeah, really? Okay, 1, I ain't got no money to go to college. 2, what am I going to study? And now colleges are studying me and my work, which is ironic. So there's that.
I love that, because you took the path, to use a cliche, you took the path less traveled, right? And you came up the mountain a different way. It might have been steeper, maybe, but you found your own path. When was the moment when you realized I've caught momentum? Like when was that seminal moment when you realized, oh, I've caught fire? It was a struggle, it was a fight, I had to keep pushing, and then bam, I don't know, deals found you, people found you, business found you. Like where do you have clarity around that intersection between the push?
Yes, I would say 2010, 11, when I self-published my first book, which is called what's it called now? Hitting a Target, a 12-month guide to distinction. That was one of my milestones in the journey of distinction and the journey of legacy. Because at the time, I was living at my mom's house. I had no laptop. I didn't have any money. But I just had a dream. I just had a creative idea. And I remember I was homeless one time. So I got evicted. I got kicked out of the house I was living in. No, actually, I was homeless. So I had to move back into my mom's house. And I remember spending hours in the library just writing on scrap paper. I didn't have any money to buy, you know, like an A4 book to write. So I had to use scrap paper to write the book. So yeah, 2010, that was my milestone moment. And it was an early moment, actually. And then I would say 2013, when I done my first TEDx titled From Detention to Distinction, that was like, whoa, like that really kind of catapulted me to a next level as a speaker. So 2010 and 2014, self-publishing my first book and doing a TEDx.
So that was the transitionary phase. And did you have some times though that you nearly did quit? Were there some times, even with the compulsion and the vision, that you nearly took the bait and you nearly tapped out?
Yeah, but you know, we only fool ourselves sometimes. I knew that. I mean, there's nothing else I could do. But sometimes I just had to I was tired. That's what it was. I was just physically and mentally tired, but more so mentally tired. And I would say to myself, I'm not doing this anymore. I'll give up. I'm just going to go and get a job. And then, okay, I'm applying for jobs, but nothing's happening. Okay, let me still network. So I would have the moments of 1 day, 2 days, I'm giving up. And then on the second or third day, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I love it, because deep down you knew, right? I mean, deep down you knew, right? The pressure got you. Everyone's telling you to go get a job, and deep down you knew, okay, I'll try it for a couple of days, and the wall. But you knew. I love that. I love that. Let's talk about. I think that entrepreneurship has been in some ways dangerously romanticized, and maybe that's especially in the last 10 years when there's a lot of easy money on the streets and so forth. We're going to a new era now, bootstrapping and a new era where things have gotten tighter for a lot of folks and so forth. But I still think there's a lot of hope and a lot of abundance. If you go looking for it, you will find it. There are going to be a lot of people come out of this season thriving, for lack of a better term. But let's talk a little bit about that. What is the dark side of entrepreneurship in your mind? What do you have to deal with spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally, maybe even physically, when you go on this journey?
Good question. Shame.
Oh, interesting.
Corporate shame, personal shame, in-house shame, out-house shame, local shame, national shame, international shame, shame. Fear. Now, fear is an interesting word. It could be a fear of the unknown, fear of poverty, fear of lack, fear of stagnancy. There's a fear to it, isn't it? It's like, oh my gosh. It's like Tupac's, I think, third or fourth album, Me Against the World. It's like literally like, oh my gosh, I'm paranoid, I'm schizophrenic, nobody want to help me, no one don't like me, everyone's talking about me. So there's that fear, there's that shame, there's that tiredness where you're so tired you can't even sleep.
Yeah.
You're so tired, you can't even sleep. You're just trying to think, you're just trying to, and even when you close your eyes, you're not happy with what you're seeing, man. So you have to quickly open it and have a drink of water and then try and go back to sleep. But yeah, the dark side of it is the shame, fear. It's that, those voices talking to you, and it can get so tiring, right, that you can't even sleep.
That's right. I remember telling my sister once, I said, I'm just too tired to be afraid. I've got to the point where I know we're talking about the fatigue, but emotionally, spiritually, physically, you're exhausted, and you have to go back to that well and dig deeper one more time to find inspiration, to find hope, to find courage. So I know shame is an interesting word. Yeah, because shame can kill dreams, right? I mean, shame, hey, I'm feeling a little bit of shame. I wonder if that kills most people. Is that shame? What do other people think? How am I coming across? And you have to do some pretty humbling things as well to keep going, I would imagine, in the journey. And so I like that you brought up shame. That's a really powerful, distinctive word. What would you do to supplement your hope? Would you read books? Would you watch YouTube videos? Are you more of a solitary person? So if you just get alone by yourself and you get still, hope returns. How do you connect? How do you recharge? When you're in those heavy days, maybe even now for that matter, right? Success has its own version of shame, trauma, other things. So tell me about that. How do you reconnect to hope and refuel yourself?
Yeah, it's good. That's a really good question. It's a combination of networking. I like watching films, funny films, of course, prayer, reading a Bible, listening to worship music, speaking to a couple of my friends, my good friends, and then looking inside again, something inside so strong, having that self-belief that, look, bro, you come this far, I've come so far, but I've still got a long way to go, to quote a great man. So yeah, it's one of the things where it's a combination of everything. It's prayer, reading the word, listening to music, just chilling out. I've learned, Ruben, particularly in the last 2-3 years, and it was very hard for me just to chill out, just to be.
Yeah.
And someone like me that's for nearly 13 years trying to building and fighting giants and, for me just to be and be still, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. But then when I've learned and I'm still learning, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. Because I've got, what it is, I've got too much inside. I haven't got so much inside of me. I've got too much inside of me.
That's right. It wants to come out. It wasn't, and I love what you're talking about, the ability to turn things off. I'm learning that as well. Like that, doing some things, like for me, like going to the movie theater is a way where I lose myself in a movie for a couple of hours.
Yes.
The physical act of going to a movie theater and sitting there and watching a movie, for example, I get that. No, that's super powerful. Jerry Maguire is a great movie. It's one of those, we have movies that speak to us, movies about hope and finding ourselves and whatnot. What would you say to someone? Well, let me say this. I think you're an interesting leader, Onyi, and I think you're the most dangerous type of leader there is, because you won't quit, and you had nothing to lose, right? You had nothing to lose. You were hungry beyond anything else. You weren't going to quit. That's the most dangerous type of competition there is. Is that right? For corporations, when you're competing against others, you kind of had those qualities, whether you liked it or not, whether you chose them or not, you had them. Is that true? Am I onto something there?
100%. It's, You know, sometimes, and that's why I says, you know, you have the bad days, but sometimes when it's the good days, I can just chill out and laugh and look back, you know, by the grace of God, where I've come from. And sometimes I laugh and I say to myself, bro, like, you're a fighter, man. You're a fighter.
Right.
Like, you're stubborn.
That's
you
right.
know,
That's
stubborn
right.
resilience. It's just, you know, because I know what Ruben, I know what I've seen. I know what I've got inside of me. Like, I know. And it's not for me, it's for my generation and generations to come. It's for the world.
That's
you
right.
know, and the world is getting more disorganized and more disorder. So someone has to bring a new order.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love that. Onyi, final words of wisdom. What would you say to somebody who is either on the journey, about to start the journey, thinking about doing this type of journey? It is high risk. I mean, there's, you know, but there's also high reward. What would you tell someone if they came to you, can I have a cup of coffee? Give me your top 3 words of wisdom from me right now.
Fantastic. Number one, I referenced it, or I said it, wrote it in 2015, that distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. So distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. And as a leader, in the midst of obstacles and problems, you have to see opportunities and possibilities. That's the key. So number one, distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. That ability and capacity to see opportunities and possibilities in the midst of obstacles and problems. Number two, I quote Tupac, even a genius asks his questions. Always ask questions. I think I've you know, great institutions, Oxford University was built on the asking of questions. Facebook was built on the back end of asking questions. So I think definitely ask questions to yourself, to your network, on LinkedIn, ask Google, to name but a few. So number two, ask questions. And number three, be so sold out for your vision, for your dream, that even when fear and fatigue and frustration looks you in your eyes, when they see deep in your soul, they realize that you're not the one to be messed with.